So you want to trace the roots of Jack Daniels back to the very beginning, huh? Well, buckle up, because this deep dive takes us way beyond the well-known story. We're talking hidden figures, forgotten legacies, like Elizabeth Calloway Daniel, an ancestor of Jack himself.
And her story, well, it's remarkable. It's about resilience, resourcefulness. You provided so much great background for this deep dive, but official records only tell part of the story. They often miss the everyday folks, let alone women like Elizabeth who were making history in their own right.
Right, exactly. It's amazing what you found. Her story really starts in 18th century Scotland. Born in 1757, she was already making waves, eloping at a young age. That was just the first adventure in a life full of them. Then she ends up crossing the Atlantic, imagine that, to a young America on the brink of revolution.
Wow, what a time to arrive, huh? I mean, we tend to romanticize the past, but the late 1700s were tumultuous. Can you imagine the uncertainty of it all, starting over in a new world? I mean, disease was rampant, conflicts with Native Americans.
Exactly, and for Elizabeth, that hardship hit early. She actually lost her first husband, Andros, during that perilous voyage across the Atlantic. Can you imagine facing such loss, in a foreign land with everything on the line?
And yet she persevered, right? Remarkable woman. She eventually remarried a Revolutionary War veteran by the name of Joseph Daniel. And that's where their story, her story, becomes intertwined with the story of America's expansion westward.
And where does that lead them? To the very heart of it all, at least for our deep dive today. The banks of Hurricane Creek in Tennessee.
They were part of a wave of Scots-Irish immigrants seeking new beginnings, a fresh start, and they found it there on the frontier, building lives for themselves and their families.
It's a testament to their spirit, wouldn't you say? Building a life from scratch in the untamed wilderness. Imagine what that must have been like. The challenges they faced, the resilience they embodied. It's a far cry from our world today, that's for sure.
And the landscape they encountered, vastly different. A wilderness teeming with life, both awe-inspiring and, let's be honest, pretty dangerous.
It makes you wonder, what would they think of the world we live in now? What would they think about their family name becoming synonymous with one of America's most iconic whiskeys? And that brings us to a question that really piqued my interest during my research, and I bet you have thoughts on this too. Could Elizabeth, with her Scottish heritage, hold the key to unlocking the mystery of early American whiskey production?
It's a tantalizing thought, isn't it? We know Elizabeth came from Scotland, a land steeped in whiskey-making tradition. It was part of their cultural DNA.
Right, so picture her arriving in the hills of Tennessee. And what do they have there? An abundance of corn, perfect for distilling. Not to mention that famously pure limestone-filtered water. It's like all the ingredients for a uniquely American whiskey were just waiting to be discovered.
It wasn't just about the ingredients, though. Think about the skills she brought with her. In 18th century Scotland, whiskey production wasn't some specialized industry, it was a way of life. Farmers distilled their surplus barley, passing down time-honored techniques through generations. It stands to reason Elizabeth would have possessed this knowledge.
Okay, ingredients, check. Know-how, check. But how do we get from those early adaptations to the distinctive character of American whiskey as we know it today? That's quite a leap.
Now that's where things get interesting. Imagine these early settlers experimenting, adapting those old world traditions to the new world. Corn, being plentiful and readily available, became the grain of choice, replacing barley.
Interesting. So that shift from barley to corn was a game changer.
Absolutely. That, along with variations in fermentation and distillation, led to the development of a uniquely American style whiskey.
And it wasn't just about taste either, was it? I mean, your research really painted a fascinating picture of life on the frontier. Whiskey wasn't just a drink. It was a form of currency.
Absolutely. You have to remember, this was a barter-based economy. Hard currency was scarce, but whiskey, well, that was liquid gold.
So forget your wallet. You needed a jug of whiskey. What could you even barter with it? Everything.
Practically. You could use it to purchase goods, pay for services, even acquire land. There's a record of a farmer trading several gallons of whiskey for a cow. A whole cow.
That's wild. A bottle of whiskey holding the same value as livestock or land. But as we delve deeper into Elizabeth's life, we uncover another layer, a different kind of story that reveals just how complex and, frankly, unfair things could be back then.
Yes, you're talking about Elizabeth's later years, her fight to receive her late husband Joseph's war pension. It's a story meticulously documented in the materials you provided.
And it's heartbreaking. Here she is, a woman who had already overcome so much, only to face this bureaucratic nightmare.
It's a stark reminder that even in a land brimming with opportunity, Life on the frontier was fraught with challenges, especially for women. They had limited legal rights, limited economic power.
It's so easy to forget that, isn't it? We have the benefit of hindsight, but for Elizabeth, this was her reality.
Your research included a particularly moving letter written by Elizabeth to the War Department. It's a direct plea for the pension owed to her husband for his service in the Revolutionary War. She was entitled to it.
It's more than just red tape, though, isn't it? It speaks to a much larger systemic issue.
Exactly. Elizabeth's fight wasn't just about the money. It was about recognition, respect, and a woman's right to exist in a society that often overlooked their contributions, especially widows.
It's tragic. Makes you think about all those untold stories, the struggles of those whose voices were lost to history because no one thought to record them. And that brings us to a really interesting aspect of your research, the story of Elizabeth's descendant, who, much like yourself, embarked on this incredible journey to uncover their family's past.
And what's remarkable is how much their journey mirrors yours. They uncovered a rich family legacy, of course, but they also found themselves wrestling with these bigger questions about history, land, and identity.
And they uncover a truth that's both unsettling and eye-opening, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. The descendant stumbles upon the original land grant for their family's property, and it's a stark reminder, a punch to the gut really, that for every settler's dream fulfilled, there were countless stories of displacement of Native American communities forcibly removed from their ancestral lands.
It's a stark reminder that our understanding of the past is often incomplete, sanitized even. We need to look beyond the surface to understand the true complexities, the contradictions that have shaped the world we live in today. And sometimes, those discoveries hit incredibly close to home. It's amazing, isn't it? We started with your curiosity about Jack Daniels, and look where we've ended up uncovering these hidden stories, these threads of resilience and, let's be honest, injustice woven into the tapestry of American history. And Elizabeth Calloway Daniel, her story sits right at the heart of it all.
It just goes to show that history isn't just about dates and battles and famous names, right? It's about people like Elizabeth. Ordinary individuals living extraordinary lives. Her story, it might have been lost to time if not for your research, but it speaks to a universal truth, that we all have the power to make an impact, to leave a mark on the world, whether it's on our families or on the course of history itself.
And what about her descendant? Their story's pretty powerful, too. I mean, the way they grappled with their family's past, their connection to the land, the weight of history. There's that one passage in your research that really stuck with me. They talk about walking those same paths as Elizabeth, sharing her dread of snakes, but acknowledging that she walked those paths with wolves. I mean, wow.
It's a powerful image, right? It speaks volumes about the passage of time, the changes we've wrought on the landscape, and how our relationship with the natural world has evolved, or maybe devolved is a better word.
For better or worse, right?
Yeah.
It's like this wake-up call, remember what came before, think about the world we're shaping for those who come after us. Speaking of which, your research highlights how Elizabeth's descendant didn't just uncover the past, they took action. That's where Untangled Roots comes in, right? Tell me more about their mission, especially their work with American ginseng.
Untangled Roots, it's an incredible initiative. And their focus on ginseng, well, it ties into everything we've been discussing. See, ginseng was once plentiful in Appalachia, even used as currency alongside whiskey at some trading posts.
You're kidding. Whiskey and ginseng. That's a combination I haven't heard before.
It's true. But like so many natural resources, over-harvesting and habitat loss, they took a toll.
It's a story we've heard time and time again, unfortunately. The unintended consequences of human actions are impact on the environment.
It's a cautionary tale, for sure. But Untangled Roots, they're working to change the narrative. They're promoting sustainable harvesting practices, working to restore ginseng populations, and educating the public about its cultural and ecological significance. It's about finding a balance, right?
It's almost as if they're taking those untangled roots, literally and metaphorically, and weaving them together, connecting the past, present, and future. It's inspiring, to be honest.
It really is. They're taking the lessons learned from history and using them to build a more sustainable future. And that's a powerful message for all of us.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive, what would you say is the most important message, the biggest takeaway from Elizabeth's story and the legacy she left behind?
I think the biggest takeaway is that history has a way of revealing itself in the most unexpected ways, often through the stories of those we might overlook. Elizabeth Calloway Daniel, a woman who braved a new world, whose life intersected with the birth of an American icon, she reminds us that the past is never truly past. It shapes who you are, the choices we make, and the world we leave behind.
Well said. And as we raise a glass to Jack Daniels, we might also want to remember Elizabeth Calloway Daniel. Her story, it reminds us that even a single life can have a ripple effect across generations, shaping the world in ways we may never fully comprehend.
To Elizabeth.
To Elizabeth, and to the power of exploration, to uncovering those hidden connections that make history come alive. Cheers to that.
Cheers.